Thank you all for coming out. This is the Cloud Director Availability Workshop. And we'll go through intros, tell you all about us and the lab and everything. And then we'll actually get in and take the lab, and then you can ask questions, and we will make sure everybody is happy. All right, so my name is Eric Stine. I've been with VMware since 2007. I actually worked on a project early on where we used to use a product called Lab Manager before VCD existed. And we built out a platform for all of our SEs to be able to test stuff and maybe even do demos with. And that kind of internal project evolved into what is now, kind of the main platform that we're using for hands-on labs. So it's kind of fun, being here all these years, watching kind of that old project evolve and morph into, what we have going on now. It's kind of awesome. So I've, as I mentioned, been here 16 years. Covered various market segments over the years and regions and everything. Back in 2016, I joined our cloud provider team, helping support our cloud provider partners. And then shortly after that, I was asked to start working on the VCD hands-on labs, and so I've been doing that probably since 2017, I believe. So that's who I am. There you go. Come on up.
Okay. Hey everyone, my name is Parul Garg. I'm a staff engineer in the vSAN engineering team. I have been in with VMware for like almost 16 years now, and been supporting HOL for the past few years with Eric. In my day-to-day job, yes, I work in the system test for vSAN, and over the past few years at VMware, I have worked with a variety of products like vSphere application, vSphere, ESX, and for the most past few years, I've been working on the vSAN. So that's my intro, and I've been supporting HOL for the past 7+ years as captain and with Eric. So yeah, Eric, you can take over.
All right. Thank you, Parul. All right, so as far as building the lab goes, you can see I basically stole this out of one of the docs pages, just because I like the way it shows the kind of site A, site B, and all the moving parts for Cloud Director Availability. So Cloud Director Availability, by the name you would assume, it is designed to work with Cloud Director. I don't know if y'all are familiar with our other product, Site Recovery Manager. It's been around forever. It's designed for DR. Well, it works with vSphere, but not VCD. So, there's that old adage, necessity is the mother of invention. We had to build a product that would work with VCD for DR, and that's where Cloud Director Availability came from. But the concepts are similar. It's the idea of replicating VMs from one site to another and failing them over if need be, and then if you're able to fix the original site, be able to fail back. As far as building out the pod, the lab itself, is a lot of fun, because in order to show DR in a lab, you have to have 2 sites, but all in one little pod. I say pod. They're really, if y'all are familiar with Cloud Director, all of the hands-on labs are simply a vApp running in VCD. And so I had to build this giant pod with Site A and Site B, and have some VMs to move back and forth, and have all the moving parts for Cloud Director Availability. In years past, we had separate pods, one just for the VCDA lab, and we had another pod just to show off VCD working with other tools like NSX and vSAN. This year I thought it'd be fun to merge those together into one huge pod. So before, both of the separate pods were already pretty big, And this year's pod is pretty big also, but it's not quite twice the size of it. I think it's about 2.2 terabytes of storage, and I think it eats up around 260 gigs of RAM when it's running. So the core team hates me, but I was happy to get all that in there so we could get not just the VCDA lab, but we also have the other VCD labs back. They were gone for a couple of years just because of timing and things. But we have them all back, but we're going to focus on the VCDA one. But just know that all of that other goodness is in the pod. And one thing that I couldn't show in years past, that I can now, we didn't really take advantage of it in the manual, but know that it's there. It's kind of an Easter egg for you. There's a management pack for VROPS for VCDA, and I went ahead and installed it in there. But if you want to play with that later, whenever y'all are taking the labs on your own. So in case y'all don't know, the labs are always fresh here at the show, but then we publish them on the main site in a couple of weeks after the show. So you can take these labs whenever you want, year round. Take them as many times as you want. I build the labs because I'm on the cloud provider team. I'm frequently working with my partners. I build the labs in a way that I can use them for test, dev, demo, POC, all of that with my partners. So I kind of build them in a selfish manner, but I also do it in hopes that others can use them the same way. So feel free. FYI, it's a lot faster to just spin up a lab than actually installing these products. So feel free to take advantage of that. All right, so the way the lab is constructed, we have different modules showing different use cases. And so we have module 2 is the one we're going to focus on today. If y'all have already taken this in past years, the steps are going to be the same. If you wanted to play with the other ones, that's fine, but for this presentation, we're going to focus on module 2, and that is probably the most common use case. The idea being customers running vSphere on-prem, and they're looking for a DR target and a cloud provider site running VCD. And so that is the use case, is vSphere on-prem to VCD. Modules 3 and 4 are both focused on the VCD to VCD use case, which most of our partners would be using if they have multiple sites available to their customers. Module 3 is showing it from the admin perspective. Module 4 is showing it from the user perspective. So that's the thing, is partners can offer a managed service where they do everything for them, or they can just provide the software and let customers manage their own DR. And you could even have tiered service offerings if you were feeling creative. Module 5 is showing a relatively new use case. And it's kind of funny, because we've had SRM for years for the vSphere to vSphere use case. But a lot of our partners were like, hey, we don't want to use all these different tools that are effectively doing the same thing. Can you make this tool work for vSphere to vSphere? And the developers were like, yeah, sure, no problem. Next release, it was there. And and then they've been evolving it. Out of the gate last year, I think, it was pretty basic, but functional. They've added more functionality to it, and so now one of the key things that was missing was the ability to create recovery plans on the vSphere use case, but now that's there as well. So it's constantly evolving and getting better with each release. All right, so as far as the labs, hopefully y'all have taken our hands-on labs before, but just in case you haven't, this is basic navigation. When you start up the lab, you'll have the manual on the right-hand side of the screen, and you have the main console window that you can interact with. In order to navigate, you just click the little arrows right and left, but if you want to jump to a certain module, like in this case, we're going to go to module 2, you click the little icon in the upper left-hand corner of the manual to get the table of contents. Then you can click on the module that you want to go to, in this case module 2, in the table of contents, and then it should take you right there in the manual. All right. And so I like to show this screen. this actually isn't in the lab, which is why I like to show this screen. It's just give you an idea of something you can do as a partner for your customers. You can actually make this screen available to your customers if you want to advertise that the service is available without actually enabling it for them yet. And make them come ask you, hey, what's this DR thing? And you say, well, it's this new service, it's X amount, and we can turn it on for you. So it's just an easy way for you to advertise it. Or if you want, you can just turn it on for them, but leave it just open for the migration use case. And then if they want DR, then you can enable that for them too. And so just different options. All right. As far as additional labs available, I mentioned I use this one giant pod. We also have 2482-01. That is just kind of the VCD 101 lab, but it also has the other modules to work with different components like vSAN, NSX, and operations and log insight, which is now named ARIA operations for logs. But the product is still Log Insight, therefore I call it Log Insight. When you are working in the lab itself, you'll see, hey, and vRealize Operations moniker is still in the lab as well. But I call it ARIA Operations because our marketing has gone through the branding. But anyway, that one is available. We also have 2482-91. I don't think I called it out in here. That's the Lightning Lab. That is really very similar to the Module 2 on the 01 lab, but it's meant to be taken in 30 minutes or less. And really it's focusing on the tenant side, the tenant interaction of consuming things in VCD. And so we did that one really in hopes that to make it easier for our partners to just send their customers to it to get used to the VCD interface before they start consuming the service from the partner. So I've had partners in the past that kind of built their own training, and it's like, what if I just make a module? And I'd be like, oh, that'd be great. So here it is. So it's 2482-91 is that lab. So that is that. Of course, whenever everything is done, don't forget to take your survey, I think. Okay, we're not, now we're gonna actually go through the lab itself, I guess. Here, we can, yeah, come on. There we go. All right, so now I want you all to go through the lab, and I can, go through it up here as well. But it's pretty straightforward. Just go through, follow the modules, or follow module 2, follow the instructions in the manual. If you have any problems or questions as you're going through it, just raise your hand, and Parul can come over and help you, and I will bring it up and I'll just kind of like click through, but there's a good chance we won't be in sync. So go at your own pace. And as I mentioned, feel free to ask questions. You have the people that wrote the lab available to you. It's one of the big benefits of coming to the show is, being able to ask questions directly. A little side note, I forgot to mention this earlier. I tried to cache as many credentials as I could, so y'all wouldn't have to type as much. So feel free to use that on the fields like here. Site B defaults to T1 admin. You can use the administrator, and that should get you in.
Just to note that if you're looking through Module 1 is like basically a read-only overview of the VCD latest version and the supported features. So the hands-on steps will be from Module 2.
One thing I wanted to point out on step 41, where you're assigning the policy to the tenant, on this page in previous versions, the default policy had everything disabled somewhere along the way. I can't remember which version. We made it so the migration is enabled. So remember, I was mentioning earlier, if you want to make it available through customizing the portal for the customers, they can do migrations, because it's enabled by default. You know, but if you want to assign specific policies to customers or turn on DR, then that's where creating the policy and assigning it comes in. On step 51, where you're entering in your cloud service details, the username is just, or for the org admin, it's just the username at the org, basically. So that's why we have the tenant, or T1 admin at tenant1 in there. Hi everyone, I just wanted to call out things like the waiting for the replication to happen. Let's see, yeah, might take some time in the nested environment. It just depends on what's going on in the background. Obviously in a production environment, it's going to totally vary based on your network and the VM size and all that. But here we're at the mercy of whatever load is on the system. So it's going to vary, but sometimes it's pretty quick, sometimes it takes a couple minutes. But just let us know if anything goes really wrong, but it should happen in a couple minutes. On step 88, where you're confirming the test cleanup, if you switch over and you still see it there, it might still take a minute for it to go away. You can also just manually refresh, but if in the UI on the side where you were configuring it, if it shows that it's cleaned up, then it should be cleaned up, but you just might need to refresh the VCD UI for it to go away. Or just wait a minute, like I just looked at it and it was there and then it went away before I could click refresh, so. Another thing I wanted to point out in the lab, we have you using a combination of clicking on the icons across the top versus the all actions drop down. And that's really just so you can be familiar with both. As you notice, the icons match, the actions are the same. It's just to give you familiarity that you can do the actions across the top or the all actions drop down to access those steps. Another thing I wanted to point out is, the first part of the lab, we have you doing a lot of the actions from the on-prem side. And then when you're doing the actual failover, we have you do it from the Cloud Director side. And that is also just so you gain familiarity with both. You can do those actions from either side if when you are doing that initial configuration, you check the box to allow cloud config from the other side. You can do those steps from either side, and that's what we wanted to show in the lab. So that's why we have you doing both, you're using both sides to do these actions. Hopefully everyone is moving along smoothly. Parul just told me that some folks forgot to set the test network and the migration or recovery settings or protection. And so it's just, I wanted to point out why that's there. You want to be able to test things as well as failover, and the best way to make sure that your failover is going to work is to test it on a regular basis. And so what we set up in the lab is a separate network just for testing, so you can leave your production up and running. When you run your test, that VM comes up, but it's on that isolated test network. So you can make sure that it's up and running and functional, and if you have other VMs running on that same isolated network, they can talk to each other but not get out to the rest of the world and mess up your production environment. So when you're setting this up in your own environments, highly recommend having an isolated or separate test network from your production network. So when you run your test, you can get it as close to real world as possible. So that way you will be much more comfortable knowing that when you actually have to fail over, everything is going to work as expected. So hope that helps. Looks like people are starting to wrap up. For those of you that still have your headsets on, thank y'all. Thank y'all for coming out. And if you have any more questions, of course, feel free to grab us and we're happy to answer those.